Remain seated, please. Permanecer sentados, por favor.
To all who come to this happy place, welcome.
Our largest single-theme land expansion ever.
Now we want you to share with us our latest and greatest dream.
Matterhorn Matt presents Matterhorn Mondays.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 148 of Matterhorn Mondays. And Alex said that he'd have to get groceries right as the show started. So Alex is here. He's muted, and he turned his camera off. So that's why there's, you know how it goes. So I guess for now, it's just your boy, your host, Matterhorn Matt, along with Jeremy as always, and Alex will be here. Alex will be here shortly, everybody. But we do have a lot of great topics to get into today, and we're aware that it's not Monday; it's actually Wednesday. At least today we're recording is Wednesday. We had to postpone the episode because Alex is up in Portland or up in Oregon, and he had to take a few days off just because the heat was and the smoke was so unbearable where he's living. So shout out to Alex, really braving it out there, and shout out to everybody else who's facing all these fires that are happening. Not just in
it's
Oregon,
basically the whole West Coast.
Yeah.
The whole West Coast is on fire. It's really horrible. I'm sort of in a pocket. Obviously, we have smoke, but I'm sort of in a pocket right now that doesn't have any fires. But it's fire season.
Yeah, well, not like you guys know what I mean. Yeah, Alex, shout out to Alex for being able to make it to today's show, because like I said, we do have a lot of great topics to talk about. But you guys know the drill. Links to all of our socials will be down in the description below, as well as links to Alex's YouTube channel. Go ahead and subscribe to Mr. Alex the Historian. And if you'd like to be wished a happy birthday live on the stream, you can do so by clicking the link down below, submitting your name in the Google Doc, and we will add it to our calendar. And it looks like this week we have Monday the 14th, Jacob. Happy birthday to Jacob, as well as this upcoming Friday the 18th, Rebecca. And this is an interesting last name that is going to be very difficult for me to pronounce. Rebecca Candido. It's Spanish, I'm pretty sure. From Brazil, in parentheses, is what she put in the description. So happy birthday to Rebecca. And Saturday the 19th,
wow.
Tiger Band 66. Happy birthday to all three of you, as well as, happy birthday to everybody else who, whose birthday it is. But you guys, it's time. 575-386-5814. We would love you guys to call into the show today, voice your opinions on any of the, on the topics that we talk about, because I'm sure lots of discussion will be brewed up once we eventually dive deep into the topics that we're going to be talking about today. That is, again, 575-386-5814. Call, leave a voicemail, and the rules, we should have an official, a rule posting. I guess the one main rule is to keep the voicemails under a minute as best as you can. Just because sometimes we have a lot of voicemails. Some are over 2 or 3 minutes. It's hard to get to everybody without making the show sort of, just seem to drag on. So under a minute, that would be great.
Yeah, and unfortunately, if you have made a Matterhorn Wednesday or Wacky Wednesday joke in the past 10 minutes, you're not allowed to call in.
Oh, no. We don't make the rules, guys. Don't hate the player, just hate the game, as they say. I think that can apply to this. But you guys, I failed you this time. I don't have a Snapple for this week's Matt Snap, so I apologize. But I do have a soda from McDonald's, if that makes up for it. Actually, I think the Snapple that I drink has more sugar than the soda that is currently in this cup from McDonald's. So Matt Snaps is canceled this week, but will be returning next week as well. So I'm sorry to all of you Matt Snaps enthusiasts. Tune in next episode. But before we get into the main juicy topics, let's go ahead and get into this week's news from the Peak.
We now present to you News from the Peak.
Let's go. It did not buffer once, you guys. That is a...
Wow.
Can we get a thumbs up in chat, everybody? Big thumbs up in chat for that. And yeah, I guess before we get into this, Alex has returned. Alex, before we get into news from the Peak, why don't you go and say hello to everybody?
Hello, everybody.
Yeah, Alex is here. Now we're all here, and now we can get into this week's news from the Peak. For our first bit of news from the Peak today, The Mandalorian Season 2 trailer has been released. And, if you guys are fans of the first season, this, initial teaser trailer didn't really give much away when it comes to plot details. But, I guess that's normally how these teaser trailers sort of work. And as you guys know, Season 2 of the hit show will be premiering on Disney Plus October 30th, just a little bit over a month away. So yeah, you guys have that to look forward to, all you Mandalorian fans. And this is sort of an interesting second news from the Peak. The Mandalorian Los Angeles Beach studio sells for $600 million. Now imagine how many Baby Yoda plushes you could buy with $650 million. That is that's pretty cool if you ask me. But for our final bit, that's the birthday calendar. I don't know why it switched to the... Anyways, for our final bit of news from the Peak here today, Disney releases a trailer for Magic of Disney's Animal Kingdom, and premiering on Friday, September 25th. The 8-episode show, quote, gives viewers a backstage pass to explore the magic of nature within Disney's Animal Kingdom, the Animal Kingdom Lodge, and the seas with Nemo and friends. So this is pretty neat sort of documentary series that's going to be dropped, like I said, September 25th. But that does it for this week's news from the Peak. Alex, what are your thoughts here on any of the news from the Peak topics that we talked about today?
I mean, I think the only thing I really can say anything about is the magic of Disney's Animal Kingdom. That actually looks interesting to me, and I do look forward to seeing that.
Yeah. Jeremy.
Yeah, I that looks really, really cool. It's nice to see content about the parks like that. So I think that's really cool to show that they're more than just, an amusement park, So I think that'll be really, really cool. And of course, Mandalorian, I'm excited. I know Matt is, and I know Alex is not. So that's
correct. Yes. For once, you actually say something that's correct.
Burn. Well, yeah, there's the picture. I finally got it to work. And I guess it's funny that it's called Magic of Disney's Animal Kingdom when it includes Epcot. But I guess it means sort of like the broader sense of the term Animal Kingdom, not necessarily the park name, because it includes Epcot stuff. But anyways... Because the title is Magic of Disney's Animal Kingdom, but it has stuff in the show about the seas with Nemo and friends in Epcot, which is not an Animal Kingdom.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. Because it's going to be about their, their wildlife preservation efforts. That includes what goes on at the living seas. We forget that's an actual, research facility.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, we tried to make news from the Peak brief here today because we have a lot of main topic discussions to get into this week. We wanted to we wanted to make sure that all three of us were here for these discussions that we're going to have, because I feel like if it was just me and Jeremy or somebody else as well, we wouldn't do the topics justice. So I'm glad to have all three of us here for today's show so we can finally talk about the topics that we have today. First topic, new Mulan remake under fire for controversy. Second main topic, or I guess second and final main topic, Disney covering up active COVID cases, as well as, the potential of Disneyland reopening soon and why that may or may not be happening. We're excited to get into that as well, but I guess it's time to dive into our first main topic of the day. It's not the right picture. There it is. All right. Well, yeah, this is going to be a really interesting discussion, so let's go ahead and jump right into it. Now, as I'm sure you're all aware, the new live-action Mulan remake recently hit Disney+, with the New York Times calling it, quote, lightly funny and a little sad, filled with ravishing landscapes, unquote. I guess that's a review of the film. I haven't seen it personally. I probably will not see it personally, but Disney has fallen under some controversy after the film's release. Disney filmed the remake in various regions across China, and in the credits of the film, Disney offers special thanks to more than a dozen Chinese institutions that helped the film, including 4 Chinese Communist Party propaganda departments in the region of Xinjiang. Hope I pronounced that right. As well as the Public Security Bureau of the city of Turpan, all of which are organizations that are facilitating crimes against humanity. So, this discussion sort of goes beyond the whole, Disney's making another live-action remake. I'm going to boycott this movie. Don't give them my money. So we don't see any more of these live-action remakes. This goes... In my opinion, this goes way sort of beyond that sort of, general argument that we hear discussing these live-action remakes. But, continuing on here, more than 1 million Muslims in Xinjiang, again, hope I pronounced that right, have been imprisoned in concentration camps, with many being released, but many more being killed inside these camps. Forced sterilization campaigns have also caused the birth rate to plummet around 24% in 2019, and, quote, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group, unquote, fits within the legally recognized definition of genocide. So a lot of information to sort of unpack there. So to recap sort of what I just said, Disney worked with regions where genocide is occurring and thanked the government departments that are helping to carry out that genocide. So we can go ahead and sort of pause right there. Jeremy, what are your thoughts here on this, new controversy that's risen up over this movie?
Yeah, well, this backlash it seems inevitable now, but it was building up to this. I mean, sort of a constant theme that we've been talking about for the past few weeks, because Mulan's been out for a few weeks now. We've been mentioning it a few times, was being critical of Disney collaborating with the Chinese government in general and for their goals of international expansion. Market-wise. So, and this is the cost of that. I mean, this is what happens when that happens. Yeah. And people are not going to find that acceptable. So, yeah, I'm hoping that this is sort of the straw that breaks the camel's back on this rebranding effort that we've been seeing about promoting Disney as an international brand, a sort of what's the word? Like a ambassador of global capitalism, of globalization, kind of thing. And I'm hoping this stops. They stop and reflect and go, okay, well, maybe this isn't necessarily the right thing to do. And I also think it's the straw that might break the camel's back in terms of these remakes. Obviously, there are many that are lined up for release. I doubt that they'll just stop the ones that are already in production. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, we've already had kind of public exhaustion over these remakes after remakes. Now, they do make billions of dollars, but that's not necessarily because like the public thinks they're great movies. It's because Disney basically goes to every single movie house and sets an ultimatum down and says, if you don't play this movie in like 5 of your theaters in your complex, then you don't get our movie at all. Yeah. And so it prevents other movies that don't get to be shown in movie theaters. And then, of course, it makes $1 billion because of that. But we're also seeing, and you'll probably talk about this later, that this movie's not doing well financially, not just in the United States, but in China as well. So I'm sure we'll talk more about that. But I'm thinking this might be the straw that breaks the camel's back for Disney's current rebranding effort of international expansion, and also the movies that they put out in general.
Yeah, Alex, what about you? What are your thoughts here on this whole controversy that's been going down?
Well, this is something that I've never had to really think about before in terms of Disney movie making and stuff like that. But it's certainly very upsetting. Um, and I don't even know if I know what to do about it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I mean, as far as I know, I personally wouldn't want to watch a movie that, that supported organizations that are committing crimes against humanity like that, and it's just interesting to see how Disney would go to such great lengths to make sure that their movies are seen and purchased,
Yeah.
all over the world. And from a business standpoint, it's interesting because a lot of people would say, well, it's just business, Alex, like business dictates that we,
Sure.
have to keep making money. But it's like Jeremy was saying, it's like, where do you draw the line between like what is business versus like what is morally or ethically right? I think Disney, has a responsibility to be, to think of things and do things ethically, and that's kind of my standpoint on it is that I think that if Disney knew about this beforehand, they shouldn't have made this movie with those organizations because it's not ethically right to do that. I mean, I think that basically just kind of sums up like how I feel about it, that Disney should think ethically about their decisions, their business decisions and stuff like this.
Yeah,
That's going to be the theme of today's show.
Yeah, honestly, with the second topic as well. But yeah, like I mentioned before, this most certainly does go beyond the whole, Disney's releasing another cookie cutter remake, of this classic animated film that everybody loves. So I'm boycotting it. Won't give them my money so Disney knows that I'm not supporting these remakes. Like I said, this goes way beyond that. Disney did not need to work with that city. Why not try and find other places in China to film your movie? I mean, I haven't seen Mulan, but, the New York Times said it had great landscapes. I mean, so I'm sure, they could find maybe another location to film the movie at. And, this, I don't know, it's really strange because this sort of indirectly tells us that Disney was putting profits first, trying to appease the Chinese government first, in order to above everything else, like Alex said, above everything morally. It almost just blows my mind. Like we just talked about last week as well. One of the company's biggest markets outside of the U.S., of course, is China when it comes to these films. And, we shouldn't forget also that before the film even came out, the lead actress, and her name is difficult to pronounce, Liu Ife. I remember it had like sort of a Spanish pronunciation at the end.
All right, keep going on.
Yeah, came out. The lead actress came out in support of the Hong Kong government and backed the city's police, who have, of course, if you've been following the news, have been criticized for their use of force against the pro-democracy protesters during the whole protesting that's been going on in Hong Kong. So, all of this, on top of the fact, like Jeremy mentioned as well, that the film is doing very poorly in China's theaters as of late, because as I'm aware, or if I'm remembering correctly, this film did get released in, if not all, then some Chinese movie theaters. So, and yeah, it's just sort of asks the question, what did Disney think was gonna happen here? Did they think they'd be able to get away with this, sneak that, small little thank you into the credits, and then, we wouldn't dig, or people wouldn't dig further into that just to snoop around, and this came up. So what did Disney think was going to happen, really, is the question that I'm asking. So I guess that leaves the question here: where does Disney, how do they even try to move forward from this? Because this is obviously such a horrible look for the company, at least in my opinion. Alex.
Oh yeah.
You know, I mean, I really don't know what to say, like how to answer that, because I mean, obviously everybody wants to hear me say, "Oh, well, you know, Disney should just, you know, stop doing business with China if it's going to be that kind of business, you know." But at the same time, like I also feel like I don't know the whole story. And maybe there's a different way of handling this. Um, Maybe I don't know. I don't want to make assumptions, but um, I think moving forward, you know, what Disney needs to do is, well, you see, Disney used to be kind of like, they used to say that they took no sides. They didn't have a political opinion. They didn't have a, you know, I forget what it was, but they were like neutral is what I mean. And so
Yeah.
I think that now that Disney, the last 10 years or so, has been really trying hard to get into the Chinese market and stuff and really work with China, I think it has led to the degradation of their, you know, their neutral viewpoint. Now it's kind of like, well, now we got to pick a side if we want money.
Yeah.
And I don't agree with that. I really don't. I really don't think anything should, you know, should supersede their ethics. You know, I really think that you know, in the future, if they need to film a movie in China or something, they need to do it without, you know, going to these different organizations. You know, if they don't have permission to film somewhere without the, you know, without the permission of some kind of, you know, awful organization like that, then they need to not do it. They just
Yeah.
need to not do it.
Yeah, really well said, Alex. Jeremy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, what it boils down to is exactly what Alex was highlighting, which is it boils down to integrity. It boils down to ethical integrity. It boils down to artistic integrity. I mean, last week, the last show, we were talking about how the rebranding effort of expanding to international markets and the collaborating so closely with the Chinese government has made pretty watered down material, you know? And listen, I mean, the movie's getting some artistic praise. I watched it. I found it to be on par with all the other remakes. Like, it was good, but you know, I won't really remember it in a year. It wasn't as much of a huge departure from the original movie as it was being hyped to be, but it does boil down to taking a stand and saying, this is our movie, take it or leave it. You know, this is the movie we've made. And if you're not gonna show it because you have a political issue with it, too bad. You know, bye. You don't get our business.
Yeah.
That's how you do it. I mean, that's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do, and the right thing to do is always the right thing to do. It's not complicated. It's not I mean, like, yeah, the money makes it complicated, but for all the wrong reasons. It boils down to integrity in all shapes and sizes. I agree with Alex completely.
Yeah, I've seen some discussions online about how this whole thing has sort of tainted their view of the whole company in general, which, you know, I'd agree. That sort of is a good stance to have on this, because it's you know, I wouldn't have expected this company that we've, you know, we here on the show criticize Disney a lot for the things that they do, but, you know, this goes... in my opinion, this goes way beyond some of the stuff like, you know, oh, Bob Chapek put in Pixar Pier. That's awful. Let's spend an hour talking about it here on the show. That, you know, this sort of is just
Right.
above all of that stuff. And I would agree, this does sort of taint the brand for me. It's going forward. I don't know how I would feel about Disney, coming out with these movies, or I don't know. It's complicated. It's complicated, I guess. But yeah, this is the world that we live in, I guess.
It's just, it's upsetting because it's like, you would expect, oil companies to do some pretty shady things, but Disney has always touted itself as the company that, that makes these moral decisions, a company that cares. And so this is certainly one of those times where you see something where it truly shows that they're just another company.
Yeah.
So that's kind of sad.
Absolutely. But here's the thing. Here's the reality. Of course. I mean, they are a multinational corporate conglomerate, media conglomerate. They are like those oil companies. They are a huge monopoly. They swallowed up one of the most historic movie studios of all time. They are just a company. This is not Disney, the artistic organization of the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, and even 70s and a little bit of the 80s. This is Disney, the multinational corporation. And what do multinational corporations do? They expand out like the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
And this is what they do. They conquer.
Yeah. Well, like I said before, 575-386-5814. We'd love to hear what you guys have to, your opinions on this whole thing. Avery pointed out in chat, and I guess I left this out of my notes, but I guess it's sort of good to know this as well in the context of everything. Touchstone released Kundan, a biographical film about the Dalai Lama, and this was, I believe, when Eisner was still in charge, so I believe in the 80s or in the 90s, I believe this happened, and Avery goes on, China was upset, so Disney apologized to make them happy and remain in the Chinese market. So they've done things in the past to try and keep themselves in, with the Chinese government, but, even back then, nothing to this extent. T-Suit91 asked, what would Walt do? I don't know. That's an interesting...
I don't know.
That's an interesting... I mean, we wouldn't know what he would have done. We can, give our own thoughts about what he would have done, but, it's complicated, I guess. It's a complicated question, but, again...
Yeah.
We will be following...
Yeah,
we'll be following the story, like an ant follows food that's on the ground. I don't know. I tried to make a thingy there.
All right.
But like I mentioned before, this film is doing very poorly in China, so we'll sort of keep tabs on that going forward. If any news stories develop regarding this whole controversy as well, we want to keep you guys updated on this kind of stuff. But before we get into I guess we can get into the COVID rundown before we take a quick break to hear from the channel's sponsors. So, you guys know what time it is.
This week on Matterhorn Monday, Matt and company continue their reports and discussions on COVID-19 and its impact on the Disney company around the world.
COVID headlines rundown. First headline here today, Hong Kong Disneyland is set to reopen soon pending government approval, reports resort issues official statement. And of course, links to these articles as well as the ones that we discussed previously or sourced from previously will be linked in the description down below. And as you guys know, Hong Kong Disneyland was closed between January 23rd and June 18th. And then they, of course, reopened, but they were forced to close again on July 25th, about a month after they just reopened. But yeah, I guess the park is eyeing a reopening. And for our second headline here, Walt Disney World cancels Mickey's Very Merry Christmas Party and Candlelight Processional. I don't know if I said that right.
Don't look to us for approval.
I did. I looked to them to see. Well, anyways, cancels that for 2020, announces alternative offerings. So I guess, this came to no surprise. Disney canceled the Halloween party in the Magic Kingdom. It would make sense for them to cancel the Christmas party as well as the Candlelight processional. Close enough, if I got it close enough. And for our
got
third...
it exactly right.
Okay, perfect. Third headline here, limited indoor seating set to resume at restaurants in downtown Disney at the Disneyland Resort, and the restaurants include the Jazz Kitchen, California Soul, and more. Fourth headline here, Disney World makes legal filing against struggling Morocco Pavilion restaurant and shop operators at Epcot. I believe this is sort of a growing story that we've seen more coming out from those World Showcase, restaurants, which is very sad to see. But final COVID headline here today. Disney theme parks face another quote-unquote lost year in 2021, analysts forecast from the OC Register. And, links to all those will be down in the description below if you'd like to read up further. But before we get into our final main topic, which, you guys want to stick around for the final topic, because there's a lot to unpack here in this final topic. We're going to take a quick break here to hear from the channels, or from the show's sponsors. If you guys are wondering where you can find even more family-friendly live streams just like this one, head on over to theliveplace.com. The Live Place is your headquarters for great family-friendly live streams. They cover anything from Disney to other vacation spots, various variety shows, and have some amazing streamers like Resort TV 1 and myself. Also, be sure to check out puckermint.com, where you can find amazing pins and stickers. Puckermint is based out of Albuquerque, New Mexico, just a few hours from where I live. And since I'm a big believer in supporting local artists, we decided to partner up. Be sure to use the coupon code down below when you make your next order. Again, that's puckermint.com and puckermint on Instagram.
If you don't turn in that script, I'm calling the police. And I said, why would you call the police? He's very difficult. Oh, we're back on.
We're back. Surprise! Well, for our second and final topic here today, we are going to be discussing Disney pushes for reopening amid allegations of covering up active COVID cases and the quote-unquote real reason why Disneyland hasn't reopened yet. And we sort of have, or I guess Jeremy has his theory as to why Disneyland has not opened yet. We're going to be diving into that later on in the topic, but we can sort of start off here. This whole story, it's just a bunch of stories sort of rolled up into one big main topic, because they all sort of interweave with each other, they all relate, and you'll find out once we finish discussing everything. But as you all know, in early July, Disney began the phased reopening of Walt Disney World, including its 4 theme parks and select resort hotels. And as I'm sure you're all aware as well, Disney did plan to reopen the Disneyland Resort, but, we all know how that went. Disneyland did not end up reopening. Downtown Disney is open now, but Disney has now unveiled a new partnership with the U.S. Travel Association that encourages travel in the next 6 months. The new initiative called, quote, Let's Go There, unquote, is a new effort to encourage everyone to begin traveling again. Quote, the memories and experiences that travel enables cannot be replaced, said Jill, the president and managing director at Disney Parks, Experiences, and Products, and co-chair of the Let's Go There coalition. So, yeah, sort of, I don't know why I stopped reading there, because there's more to say, but, quote, this campaign is a first step in inspiring Americans to think about planning a vacation and encouraging them to look forward and experiencing the wonder of joy and even magic that only travel can offer. So, the typical Disney is sort of building up to, Disney makes memories, makes magic happen. It's still worth noting that we are in the middle of a global pandemic, and the state of Florida's Department of Health has issued warnings that people should avoid crowds, closed spaces, and close contact of up to more than 10 people. So I don't know if you guys forgot that or not, but there's still a virus going around. Some people have forgotten, but we here on the Matterhorn Mondays show have not. Now this is where things get interesting because, as most of you are aware, Walt Disney World also reopened alongside the quote-unquote NBA bubble to resume the NBA season and playoffs, in which staff, players, coaches, and personnel all adhered to strict social distancing guidelines and isolation paired with on-site testing, while Disneyland Resort not fully opening, just downtown Disney, with several hundred cast members. So, big difference between that. Downtown Disney opened with no on-site testing, and like we touched on in the previous episode, union workers called testing quote-unquote not viable and prone to quote-unquote false negatives, while only temperature checks, of course, they only issue the temperature checks to guests who enter, which, as we've discussed before, is sort of a sense of false security almost. Temperature checks, not necessarily, you can have a perfect temperature but still have the virus, lurking inside of you. But continuing on, 4 sources have told the Daily Beast that Disney has kept the total number of positive cases of COVID-19 under wraps, only alerting unions to the positive results of their members often days after the fact. Quote, "We want to know if any cast members have tested positive, but Disney has taken the position that they're only going to tell us if our cast members do," said Matt Bell, a spokesperson for UFCW Local 324, one of a dozen unions representing workers or quote-unquote cast members at Disneyland. Quote, "What is supposed to happen is contact tracing to find out who is exposed and quarantine them as well. I can't confirm that they've done that," unquote. They go on to say that almost all of their COVID information has come by word of mouth. That is, the cast members hearing about COVID infections with their other cast members have only been coming, they've only been learning from their other cast members who have been telling them, oh, so-and-so is off work today. They tested positive. They haven't heard, mostly anything from Disney, which is very interesting, but we'll get into everything. Such as quote-unquote coworkers texting each other, coworkers talking to each other, and things that my spouse has seen on the job. None of this is from any of the managers. Disney's management is not really officially acknowledging that any of this is happening, unquote. This all comes to us from an individual who goes by the name of Matt, who has requested to remain anonymous, from the dailybeast.com. A great article that I'm paraphrasing a lot in this because there is a lot of information to unpack in that article. So if you guys would like to, read up more on this, I'd suggest going to that. So Matt is the alias that this individual goes by out of, fear for his job, stating that after getting tested on his own time, he had caught the virus from a relative, and that Disney didn't confirm the case until the following Monday, letting a week pass before his coworkers were informed of his exposure. So that is very problematic, which will, there's still more to unpack here. We'll start the discussion here in a bit. They called out Disney, saying in text messages that Disney doesn't want to do testing because it would expose how many of the cast members are sick, forcing them to shut down the whole reopening operation again. And another cast member reported that just 5 days after testing positive for COVID, Disney had requested for him to return to work, even though he had not isolated for the minimum 14 days and had not received a negative test result back. So we can sort of take a breather there, because that was a lot of information to pack into this, one part of the discussion here. And I honestly don't really even know what to say after reading, because like I said in the article, the Daily Beast, they show like screenshots of text messages from the cast member who wants to remain anonymous, back and forth to the other cast members, just relaying all this information, which I've summarized a great deal here in this my notes here. I have really, it's astonishing to me, but I guess we can sort of pause here. Jeremy, what are your thoughts just off the bat initially of hearing about how Disney is, quote unquote, covering up all of the COVID cases that have been popping up recently?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to point out that Alex on our last show said that he wouldn't put it past Disney to cover up active COVID cases. So Alex, very, very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this story is only going to keep developing, and at a certain point, Disney's not going to be able to hide from this. This is a pretty big deal, and they could get in a lot of trouble. Obviously, less so because Florida doesn't really care. They've been pretty reckless with their handling of the virus. But this is not okay, and this could have been solved if Disney had made it a financial obligation to provide vigorous um, on-site testing and contact tracing for Walt Disney World employees, not just the cast member, everyone, Walt Disney World cast members. I struggle to understand why that wasn't a financial obligation. I just want to point out that Walt Disney Company in the third quarter, by the end of the third quarter, made a profit of $11.78 billion. I understand that, that's less than what they projected and less than what they would normally want to make. But that is $11.78 billion, and it was not a financial priority to them to provide on-site testing for their employees. And, before we talk about, they're making significantly less than what they're used to, it's relative. I want to point out that this is the Walt Disney Company. I want to point out what Walt Disney World is. It is basically a city. They've created their own way to produce and run energy, and it's all renewable. They have their own transportation system. This is a company that invents for the public benefit, and they couldn't channel that spirit and channel those resources and the talent that they have to even improve how we do testing in public. It's shameful. It's shameful. And I hope this story keeps developing and we find out more information, because this is it's unacceptable.
I agree 100%. Alex, what are your thoughts here on this developing story?
In regards to, Disney possibly hiding, the numbers of COVID cases of their employees at Disneyland Resort, as I said before, I wouldn't put it past Disney to hide these COVID cases, because when I worked at Disney, there was a number of things that we saw that we had to be very quiet about, so that way Disney couldn't, either didn't have to inform the public or didn't have to get in trouble for something. And as a cast member, you weren't allowed to discuss these things, so that was their way of hiding it. One of the things that I can recall off the top of my head, as a lot of people know, when Disney says that, nobody dies at Disneyland, it actually really means that if someone dies at Disneyland, they actually get pronounced dead at the hospital. And therefore never has to say anybody actually died there. And one of those examples was actually a time when one of my coworkers said that he was helping a lady whose daughter, was a little baby, had suddenly died of sudden infant death syndrome. And after the situation, they found out later that the death was listed as, at the hospital, pronounced dead at the hospital. It's like, no, the baby was on property, deceased for a couple of hours. So it just, it just was not. It's not something that I would put past Disney. I really think that they would want to hide these COVID cases to ensure that their, reopening goes as planned and stuff like that. It's just, and it's too upsetting to think about. I'm sorry. It's just like, it just makes me mad. Like, you really expect this company to act ethically, and then you find out that they just can't. It's just not in their ability to act ethically.
Well, that's two stories in a row where we've sort of had a punch in the gut when it comes to this kind of, or I guess two topics in a row, I should say. But yeah, I agree. This is very it's just, Alex called it out last week, and I agreed with him last week as well. I wouldn't have put it past Disney to cover up the COVID cases. And now that it's actually coming to light that these brave cast members who have, this guy goes by Matt, risking his job, coming to all these news sources to expose Disney for what they're doing, or I guess what they're not doing. Good for him. Good for all the other cast members who are trying to, try and make things right. But I guess moving on to a related topic as well, this is sort of falling under the second half of the topic that I discussed before we started. Disneyland president says that they're, quote, disappointed with lack of progress from state, unquote, when it comes to reopening. And I believe not just Disney has been saying this kind of stuff, but Universal as well. A lot of the other theme parks in Southern California have been backing, or I guess quote unquote standing with Disney up against the Californian government when it comes to not reopening. And the California governor actually came out. I believe this was either today or yesterday. I believe it was today, Wednesday, that this story came out. The California governor stated that Disney will make Disneyland reopening announcements, quote unquote, very, very shortly, with no, extra details added on to when that might be, just very, very shortly. And, there's a lot of not just fans of Disneyland who are waiting for it to reopen, but, we've discussed in the past workers as well who have still been furloughed since March, I believe, who have been waiting to go back to work as well. But, this all sort of just comes together into this one topic as well that we'd like to discuss here today. And I'm sure we sort of sound like a broken record these past few years talking about, when will Disneyland reopen? Speculating, Disneyland will reopen soon. A few years, yeah. Well, yeah, but... Oh my gosh, Jeremy cut out right as he said that. But anyways, yeah, so we probably sound like a broken record here talking about how, when is Disneyland going to be reopening? When will the government allow Disney to reopen? So because it's I guess basically the position that is being pushed in the media is that Disney is, or at least according to them, Disney's blaming the government for not providing Disney an actual reopening plan for Disneyland, the parks to reopen. Disney has been blaming the government for that, and that's the reason why the parks have not reopened yet. But I guess sort of taking all of this previous information, digesting it, Jeremy, what's your theory here as to the real reason why Disneyland has not reopened yet?
As we know, Florida's been pretty lax, for lack of a better word, on their handling of the spread of coronavirus in their state. So Disney was able, and other theme parks as well, were able to reopen their doors, and were allowed to get away with things like not providing on-site testing for their employees. California is a different story. We have a governor who actually takes the threat of this virus very seriously. Some people say he takes it a little too seriously. I don't really think so. I understand it's an economically anxious moment, and sadly the government hasn't done enough to quell that as well. But here's the thing. We know that they could get away with no on-site testing in Florida, but in California, I have a feeling that the reason why we've been hearing Newsom, make these statements the past few weeks saying soon. First of all, give the guy a break. His whole state is on fire. Okay. But I think Governor Newsom and their negotiations, I think he is saying that the Walt Disney Company has to provide on-site testing and contact tracing for their employees, and that they are responsible for that. And I'm sure the state is willing to help them organize that and get those resources. And I have a feeling Disney does not want to spend the money doing that because they are not doing it in Florida. And I think Newsom's saying, well, then we need to work something out, which is why it's taking a little bit of time. And I think Disney is going to the press and the fans and the public as an extension of the press, and coming out with these stories that we've also seen the past few weeks that say, we've been ready to open since July. So there was a huge surge in California in July. There was no way that Disneyland was going to open, even though they opened in Florida when there was a surge. But this state is very different. This state actually takes the threat of this virus very seriously. And I think Disney is not happy that they have to do more to provide for the safety of not just the cast members, but for the guests. If you provide for the safety of your cast members, you're providing for the safety of your guests. And so I think that that's what's happening. I think that they've reached an impasse, and where Disney doesn't want to provide on-site testing and contact tracing and develop that plan and spend the money to do that. They'd rather retheme the Polynesian to Moana, apparently. So I think that's what's going on. I think these stories are absolutely connected, and I hope more comes out about this because, I think people need to hold the company accountable, and I think cast members need to come together. And they're not coming together to do this because they don't know the information. They're only knowing this information via word of mouth.
Yeah.
I think cast members need to come together and say, "Hi, please provide us with an on-site testing plan and contact tracing." So we really need to hold Disney accountable here. And I think that's what Newsom is doing. I think that he's saying, I know you want to reopen. I know you're ready to reopen. We take the virus a little more seriously here than in Florida. And yes, you need to provide testing and contact tracing for your employees. And I think that's why there's this sort of little media war between the governor and Disney. So we'll see.
Yeah, so Alex, what are your thoughts there on the sort of Jeremy's reason as to why Disneyland has not reopened yet?
Why you said that so slowly?
I don't know why I said it so slow.
Reopened yet? Like what? Okay. So I think Jeremy kind of hit it right there on the nose. He's right. I mean, I don't know what else to add to it, but I mean, whenever Jeremy talks, he just like says exactly what I think, and so it's just like I can't add anything to it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, yeah, I do agree with Jeremy 100%, and it's honestly, when you look at Florida, the NBA has been able to do on-site testing in the bubble that they've been having. Right. The NBA has contact tracing bracelets that, not just the players wear, I believe like the entire staff personnel of all the teams, I could be wrong, wear contact tracing bracelets to, see who you've come in contact with. If you test positive, they can sort of go back and find out who you've been in contact from, so on and so forth, until they find, until everybody that needs to be quarantined can quarantine. And I know a lot of people can kind of confuse the two, and the NBA operating in Disney. Disney does not foot the bill for any of the things that, for any of the contact tracing stuff, any of that on-site testing stuff that the NBA has been doing. It's been all, the NBA that's been paying for all that kind of stuff for their players, their coaches, all that kind of stuff. So, I've seen some people sort of get confused about that. It's the NBA paying for all that stuff. Disney is not for their coworkers, and it's just really kind of, baffling to me. You'd think that the Walt Disney Company is a bigger company than, the National Basketball Association, which, I believe like the NBA, I don't know. But so you'd think they'd have enough money, if the NBA has enough money, to relocate all their players to, the Grand Floridian or wherever they're staying at, pay for all those rooms, pay for all these testing sites, all these contact tracing bracelets. You'd think that a company bigger than that company would be able to do that kind of stuff for their regular cast members to help protect the safety of, like Jeremy said, not just the safety of the cast members, but the safety of the guests as well. And like we discussed earlier, we've already seen that go wrong. If you look deeper into that article from the Daily News, the Daily Beast, link down below.
The Daily Beast, yeah.
The Daily Beast. You'll see these stories from the cast members talking about how Like we mentioned before, this guy, got tested or got the virus from a relative, got tested positive. Disney called him back to work 5 days after, he found out he tested positive. No, hardly any time to quarantine, not even close to the 2 weeks, not even a negative test result back. They called him back to work. Of course, I believe he went back to work because, work is work. You need money. But it's just kind of, it's just baffling to me, I sound like a broken record here, that Disney has not been paying for on-site testing for their cast members. And again, that's sort of just a big blow for the company, in my opinion. Morally, just sort of in combination with the previous topic that we discussed. It's not looking, at least for me, it's not looking good for the company. It's a bad look, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's a bad look from the company, very bad look. And I don't really know what the reasoning behind all of this, because like we said, Jeremy said they made $32 billion, something along those lines.
No, $11.78 billion in the third quarter.
Okay, 11.7 in the third quarter alone.
Still a lot of billions.
Yeah. So it's just, it's a bad look.
I do want to jump off there with that. I really want to drive home that $11.78 billion. I think there's been a sort of media spin that Disney's suffering, that they're down to like 1 million or something like that. And it's not true. I would like to point out, though, in case people are saying, well, relatively speaking, they've lost a lot of money that they're, they've lost a lot of billions that they're used to having, so they can't afford to allocate those resources to do that. I would like to point out that there are organizations, private and public, that have been able to provide testing, on-site testing for their employees and create those plans. I'd like to point out there, I was just reading this the other day. I wish I had it in front of me to get the facts exact, but I believe there is a college in Maine that will be providing so the virus has an incubation period of about 14 days in which you could be shedding the virus and spreading it around before you even exhibit the symptoms. So what they're doing as their students return back to school is they are actually providing testing every 2 days for each student.
Wow.
In that 14-day incubation period. Because obviously you can get tested and it's negative, go get something to eat in an outdoor restaurant, contract the virus, and you're positive, but you think you're negative. So they're providing testing for their students every 2 days. To me, that's something that I would think the Disney company would do for their employees. They have the resources, they have the money, and they have the talent to actually create and perfect how we test. Right? This is actually something that former Imagineer Eddie Sato, which we maybe have a little announcement regarding him sometime in the future, but he's been advocating for. His design studio has been talking about how we can use creativity and the principles of design to rethink our public spaces and innovate in that facility to moving forward as we're more cautious about public health and we live in the sort of current COVID society. That is an Imagineer. Why not use Imagineering and their research and development department and figure out better ways to test and create an in-house on-site testing plan? They have the money, they have the resources, they have the talent to pull it off better than anybody else. But again, I guess the Polynesian resort becoming Moana is more important.
When I worked for Disney, they had all kinds of services for cast members. It was crazy. Like you could go get yourself vaccinated, for the latest flu. You get your flu shots and stuff. You could, if let's say if you wanted to like donate blood to Red Cross, they had a Red Cross truck come by, so you can do that. You could do your taxes for free at the administration building. It was like crazy. They had all kinds of services. So there's really no excuse for why they can't do the kinds of COVID testing and stuff like that. They have the ability, they have the space. It's really, in my opinion, it's just about money. It circles back around to money.
Yeah.
not because it costs a lot to do these things, but because if they find out, if they open the park and they find out a couple months from now that a whole bunch of cast members have gotten a bunch of guests sick, then that could affect the amount of crowds that come visit the park, because who's going to want to go visit a park that's suffering the plague? So it's, it circles back around to how much money they can make. And as long as they don't report people getting sick, they can keep making money, which is why Walt Disney World is still open. Whenever I hear another Disney fan tell me, well, Walt Disney World doesn't seem to be having problems, it's like, you really trust what Disney's going to tell you? Like,
yeah.
No.
You're right. Yeah. It's like saying with the commercial set, it's a, the commercial said it was the best product.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
The commercial said this was the best refrigerator on the market. How come mine's not working?
Nice. Yeah. Well, like I mentioned before with the previous article, we will be following this story as closely as we can. We will, provide you with any updates that we find going forward in future episodes. But yeah, do you guys have any final thoughts before we sort of round off the show here on this topic?
No.
On this topic or the whole show?
No.
Oh, no, I don't have anything more to say. I hope the story keeps developing. I
Yeah.
hope we learn more. I hope journalists do their job and not be afraid to hold a big company accountable.
And the insiders, cast members out there, 585-386-5814, if you want to call in. If you've been working downtown Disney, we'd love to hear, your stories of how it's
That's
been going
very true.
down
In
there.
fact, if you'd like to be a guest on the show, you don't have to show your face.
Sure.
If you want to be anonymous, we'd love to do that. That'd be excellent.
Pitch down your voice if you want. I'm sure that's possible to do here on Discord or however.
When I was in downtown Disney, saw COVID walking around.
But yeah, I mean, we'd totally be down to do that. 585-386-5814. Message us, message me, message any one of us on Twitter. We'd love to set that up to any capacity if you'd like to, tell your stories. Not just downtown Disney, but Magic Kingdom, Animal Kingdom, all the Walt Disney World in general. We'd love to hear, how it's going there. But before we round off this episode today, we do have a voicemail to listen to. This one has no name attached to it, but so we'll go ahead and see what this voicemail is about. Let me go ahead and play this here.
Hello, Matterhorn Matthew and Co. Can we talk about how CPA wants a superior version of DC and how it deserves more love and appreciation? And yeah, I don't know if I said my name. This is Autumn, and yeah, I miss Bugs a lot. And, I really miss Heimlich and Bug Plant and Bugs, and it's tough. It really is tough to be a bug. I really miss bugs in general. I haven't been outside in a long time. I haven't seen bugs in a long time. Please, talk about Bug Plant and Pest Pit. Matthew, please talk about Bug Plant.
Well, it appears we have a very distraught fan on the line here, and I honestly don't have any advice to give you other than, I mean, she said it really honest, nailed it on the head. It is tough to be a bug. I'm gonna be honest.
It is tough to be a bug, and I strongly advocate that whoever this caller was never call this show again. Never, ever call this show again.
Oh, boy.
I don't know what I'm capable of doing if you call this show again.
Jeremy could hold me at gunpoint, like he did before the last episode. It gets into, it's a problem, you guys. But
Jeremy's violent. He's a violent guy. I mean, I don't even think you guys know how frightened me and Matt really are.
Jeremy is standing behind me off camera right now. This is a clone that he's on the show is a clone right now, you guys. I'm sorry, Jeremy. I'll behave. All right.
Autumn already knows just how violent.
Sadly, she does, yeah.
She's more violent than I am, though.
Balances it out. All right. Well, anyways, yeah, that was the show today, you guys. Thank you all for, I guess thank you to especially those who came and tuned in live at, 6 o'clock dinner time, I guess, if you guys eat dinner at 6 o'clock Disneyland time. It's 8 right now where I am, so yeah, it's pretty late. So thank you all for coming out who decided to tune in live. Yeah, thank you to everybody who listened. You guys know the drill. Links to everything will be down in the description below. Links to my Twitter, Alex's channel, Alex's Twitter, Jeremy's channel as well will be linked. Everything will be linked, you guys. And again, 575-386-5814. You can call in over, throughout the week if you have something you'd like to say. We'll listen to the voicemails once, during the next episode. We let them, stack on top of each other and knock them out one at a time. But yeah, lots of great topics. I hope you guys have a lot of food for thought, especially after the discussions that we've had today. But on that note, it is time, sadly, for us.
I just want to say something before you close.
Okay.
You seem like you're not happy about it. I just want to remind everybody to check, even if you've already checked, that you're registered to vote in whatever state that you are in and need to be registered in. If you're voting by mail, make sure you get those mail-in ballots. Make sure the minute you get that mail-in ballot, you mail it back or you drop it off right away. Election day is November 3rd, but if you're voting by mail, it is the minute you get your thing in the mail. If you are voting in person, make sure you know where your polling place is. I'm going to be saying this every week until November.
Yeah.
And if you need any resources about how to register, how to look up if you are registered, or any other information, I might be able to help you out with finding that. So you can DM me on Twitter if you have any questions regarding that. And please vote.
Yeah. Gotta reiterate that. And I think even on Instagram sometimes there's like a banner that pops up, or on Discord too. There's like banners that pop up with the resources for like all of what Jeremy said. So yeah, links will be in Jeremy's DMs and as well on the banners on social media. But yeah, on that note, thank you all for coming to today's episode. And as always, have a great big beautiful tomorrow.